Welcome to Writers Den. I'm Brenda Joyce Patterson. Writers Den is a program that showcases and uncovers all things literary in Polk County and beyond. And today, I have to tell you, I'm really excited to welcome poet, novelist, and what else can this woman not do? Jen Givhan on the show. And so, Jen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Yeah, we're going to jump right in and do this thing. So, Jen, I have to tell you, one of the things that I think is really fantastic in this wonderful career that you are building and constructing is the idea that you welcome people. You welcome new writers. You encourage new writers. And in fact, that's how I found out about you. Can you tell us why you do this? Why do you welcome new writers the way you do?
Thank you so much for having me here, Brenda. I'm very excited to talk with you. So when I was growing up on the Imperial Valley border, which is down by Mexicali, down 4 hours south of Los Angeles, 2 hours southeast of San Diego, so like as far down into some of my friends would jokingly, disparagingly call the toilet tank of California. I mean, it's that far south, right? But I loved it there. I grew up in the Imperial Valley. But growing up there, I didn't know that there was any such thing as a contemporary writing community. Yeah. I didn't know that, poets were alive and well and doing poetry readings. We didn't have any of that. We didn't have coffee shops. We had a TCBY ice cream, frozen yogurt shop.
That's a good thing.
But yeah, it was pretty good. But, so the writing that I was doing, I was, just learning in school, but it was mostly just, dead white folks, really. I mean, Walt Whitman, Robert Frost, and then, I love me some Emily Dickinson and Sylvia Plath, but I wasn't being taught. I mean, there might have been a little Gwendolyn Brooks in there, but certainly not taught in the way that it was like poetry is alive and well and vibrant for people of color, for Latinas, Mexican Americans like myself. Mm-hmm. And so I just, I didn't feel connected to the community at all. And I knew I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know what that meant. And I went away to college. And when I was in my undergrad there, I met a professor who would start to, talk a little bit about her time in the MFA program. And it was like she was using all these foreign words in this foreign language. And I had no idea, And so again, it was just, I felt so isolated and alone until just a few professors over time would drop me these what felt like clues or something, it was like a scavenger hunt and I had to go find it. And eventually after I'd adopted my son and given birth to my daughter and, my professor, that same professor, I graduated with my bachelor's and then my master's, and I still didn't feel like this writing world was open to me. I was about 26 years old, and she said, "I'm nominating," I think she didn't nominate me. She just told me about it, and I applied for it, the Penn Emerging Voices Fellowship. Wow. And this was in Los Angeles, and I applied for it, and this was the first time that I really got a glimpse into this writing world, and I got the fellowship. Wow. Which was life-changing, mind-blowing, and finally it was like the curtain had been unveiled and here are all the contemporary writers and this is what we're doing, but by this point I'm 26, 27 years old, already raising 2 children. And so every step of the way now, I'm 36, so it's been about a decade since I got that fellowship, and I've been hustling. I've got about 8 books published now, including chapbooks. But thank you. But that's the hard work that I've had to do while raising my children. And it's been tough, you know, and so I want writers at any stage in their career, wherever they are, I want to be there, not just throwing the little breadcrumbs, you have to find it yourself, but let me unveil it for you. Let me show you so that you don't have to go through that arduous process of really feeling alone and feeling isolated and not knowing that there's this whole beautiful community and people who are raising each other up, and for the longest time, it just, when I was applying to things on my own and I didn't know that this community existed, I just felt like it was all a competition. right? Because that's how they bill it. You know, it's like you're applying for these awards, you're applying, you know, you have to pay to play and all this, and it just feels like you're a number. You know, you're a faceless number to them. You know, it's anonymous,
Right.
and so, you know, and so I felt that when I didn't realize that it doesn't have to be that way, and that's the kind of community that I'm trying to create. You know, I'm trying to build a career for myself, and I still often find myself stuck within the structure, and so that's something that I'm still looking forward to doing. You know, I'm still raising my young children. I'm homeschooling them now, and it's tough.
Boy.
What I have my sight set on is helping to kind of dismantle some of this, you know, where you feel so anonymous as just a number and pay to play in the system, you know.
Right. I'm glad that you said it that way. In fact, this is one of the reasons why I decided to take this TV show on, because it's not that I'm so in love with seeing my own face on TV. In fact, I kind of hate the way my voice sounds on TV. But what I like about being able to have this TV show is to let folks know, folks who are not at university, who maybe can't afford to go to university, that there is still a way to do this writing thing, this writing life. And so anytime that I hear of opportunities and I hear of writers like you who are making it a lot more obvious that you don't have to be in this small little enclave and you're not punching it out against other writers, but that we can all come together and have this writing life, whether we're at Harvard or I don't know, Tulane or wherever.
Right. I went to a state school in California.
Yes. Yes. That you can go to state school, that you could even possibly not go to a school, and your writing experience and your writing life is still as valid. Absolutely. And that's what I really appreciate about you and your writing. Then you talked about applying for the PEN Emerging Fellowship, Emerging Writers Fellowship.
Yeah, I think it's PEN Emerging Voices Fellowship.
Emerging Voices. Okay, right. And see, that is the thing that I personally have just started to do as a writer, is apply for these fellowships and what have you, even though I've been writing for a ridiculous amount of time, but mostly behind the scenes and sort of for myself and learning my craft. I'm leading all of this, saying all this to lead up to, do you really encourage people to just start applying for these fellowships and these mentorships? Because I recently applied for and got an AWP writer to writer mentorship. I know. And just like you, I didn't know anything about it. I happened to say, I'm going to a writers conference. And then the woman who was in charge of it at the time, who had created the mentorship, Diane Zenna, I didn't know who she was, but she kind of grabbed me as I went past their booth. And she said, do you know about this? Are you part of? Come on down.
Right.
And the idea that these are the types of things as a writer that people in the industry focus on. And if you're not a writer within the writing community, the academic writing community, oftentimes you don't know anything about that. Would you encourage people to try? At what point in their writing career would you even encourage them to apply for those types of things?
Yeah, a couple of things. If it's free to apply, right? If it's free to apply, that's the thing, really. Then apply, no matter where you are in your writing career, whether you're just starting, because you just don't know, right? And art is so subjective, right? You know, I've been behind the scenes on panels for fellowships and prizes,
Yes.
And I've seen with my own eyes, you know, now on the other side of it, how subjective it can often be, right? And so there, you know, of course, we're all working on our craft, we're honing our craft, and we're at different points in our life, you know, but in terms of the craft and how we feel about ourselves as writers. But I mean, like, I won an NEA, a National Endowment for the Arts,
Whoa.
back in 2015, before I had an MFA, you know, and some people never have MFAs, but this was before I had an MFA, before I had any books published.
Really?
You know, and right. And this was, I would say, looking back now, I would say I wasn't at the pinnacle of my craft. I mean, really, what I've developed, what I've learned, and how I've grown in the past 5 years, I'd like to think that I'm a better writer now in 2020 than I was in 2015 when I earned this prestigious fellowship,
Wow.
right? Because I say, as long as it's free to apply, and I want to talk about that in a second, because I really do have a problem with the pay to play method, you know, but as long as it's free to apply, or you have the funds to do so, and only you know that, right? But I don't want folks spending their money, you know, to fuel a machine that they might never actually have a chance to participate in. And that's where I feel like it can become predatory, really, on young writers who are like trying to earn, like, oh, I really want to get up to this, you know, level. And then it's like you're paying to level up, and sometimes it's never going to pan out. And that can, you know, you need to find a different path.
Right.
Before you know, so I don't want young people and anyone really, young writers really is what I mean, anywhere, wherever you are in your writing career. You can be a young writer at 60, at 80, you know, just wherever you are in your writing career, and you know that. I just don't want you to get sucked and trapped into a system that might not actually be benefiting you. But in terms of like, wherever there is opportunity that you can afford to take that step, take that step, right? And I tell women of color, especially, you know, because we are still not earning the same as men, even as men of color, we're still not earning the same, you know, but, you know, knock on the door, right? If you got to pound on the door, and if they're still not opening that door, you climb around back, you find a fire escape, you climb up it, and you get in that window. Right. And so that's how I feel in terms of applying for things, even if it seems out of reach. It's like, reach for the stars, because you have something to say. You came to this page with your life experiences, with your heart truths, with, you know, with things that only you can say in your voice. And so, you know, we do have to learn those craft elements, but we also need the time and the money to help us work on those craft elements.
Yeah. I think it's just really fascinating. I think about my own writing sort of career and trajectory, which in many ways it feels similar to yours, in that I loved writing. I loved poetry especially. And I would read all these poets, you know, the old poets and what have you, and think, and almost feel like there wasn't a poet that was alive writing, because even though there were, they didn't get pushed the same way that the fiction writers did in schools. And it took finding a book of poetry, and not just a book of poetry, but a book of poetry written by somebody that looked like me.
Yes.
To help me realize that, you know, this could be something I could do. I found a book of poetry when I first started working at the library. All praises to the libraries. I started working at a library, and I found a book by Nikki Giovanni. And just like Emily Dickinson said, it took the top of my head off. And yes, it's just pretty amazing.
I've had one of those moments too with going to the library, and I went to the Santa Ana Public Library in Southern California and heard Sandra Cisneros read.
Oh,
and I love her. And ping, 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 I break things, guáchale, you know, and it was like finally seeing a Chicana poet like myself, very successful, you know, and just having her talk about the ancestors who come to her and give her strength and who speak through her on the page. And it was just like, oh, you know, one of those come to Jesus moments for me. So absolutely. And that was at a library.
Yes, definitely. And Sandra Cisneros is certainly part of my own personal pantheon, truly pantheon
Yes.
of contemporary poets that are writing, and not just writing, but writing from a perspective that I could sort of identify with.
Yes, absolutely.
In a way that not to poo-poo any other writer, because
Right.
one of my absolute favorite poets, sadly to say, is a white woman who has passed. Her name is Belle Waring. And I actually got a chance to meet her at a library conference. And she's another person who took the top of my head off. It was just amazing how her writing touched me. But then to be able to see people like Nikki Giovanni and Nikki Finney and Sandra Cisneros and what have you, to see those type of people who look a little bit closer to the way I look and are speaking from places that that I have a sort of similarity with, it has made all of the difference in the world. It made me from being a person who observes poetry to being a person who is a participant and a writer of poetry.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, representation matters so much. You know, I took my son is Black, biracial, and we went and saw the Spider-Man, what is it? The Spider-Verse one, the cartoon one. And
Miles Morales.
Miles Morales, right. And I was just, by the end, I was just sobbing, you know, because my son right there next to me, and like, he's just like moving with it, you know, and he looks just like Miles Morales, and he's seeing himself up on that screen and with Black Panther, you know, and it matters. Representation matters. And it gives us that permission, that extra step of permission, you know, that we can. And so it's like, maybe you need to see women of color, men of color, people of color, or, you know, whatever, from the LGBTQ plus community, people that you can identify with, telling you, I'm doing it. It's hard. It's scary. Sometimes they're going to knock you down. You get back up. I'm doing it. I'm with you. You're not alone.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, we get that in the writing itself. We get that in the community. So absolutely, I agree with you there, Brenda. Thank you so much.
I guess that's another part of, I'm going back to your own work. We had, when I was trying to figure out technical difficulties a little bit earlier, we were talking, and I told Jen, I said, the part that I really like about her and her writing life is that she shows the work. She writes, and she's very transparent. Thank you so much, Jen, for this, for being very transparent and talking about what types of things are required behind the scenes to live and to fashion this writing life. And so I know a little bit about what you do sort of behind the scenes, but could you tell us what you do behind the scenes to fashion this writing life that you have? Because you write, but you also teach, but you also, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an adjunct professor, and a lot of why I haven't, you know, strived harder to find a tenure track position, although they're very difficult to obtain, right? No matter who you are, no matter what your credentials are, you know, and I have a master's degree and an MFA, which is the equivalent of a terminal degree, but even so, it's very difficult. But is that I'm very focused on my children who both have special needs. And so I try to stay as involved in their education and in their, you know, just instruction as I can. Right. And so I haven't been willing to move across the country for a job as a lot of professors have. And so, you know, those two facts, that it's hard to get a tenure track job and that I'm more focused on my family right now than career, on it, quite honestly, a teaching career, have meant that I've been an adjunct for over a decade. And that often means that I have to hustle.
Right.
I'm teaching, at least 5 classes per semester, almost every semester, fall, spring, summer, every single year. This was the first year that I had, this 2020 is the first full year that I'd qualified in my over 11, 12 years teaching as an adjunct, that I'd qualified for health insurance.
Oh, God.
And so, before that, I'd been hustling China. Sometimes I've been on, government funded health insurance. When I was in California, it was Medi-Cal, and then, Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid. What was I on? Medicaid, probably
Medicaid.
Yeah. And my kids and I were sometimes on when my husband was in school. So it's been tough, and often not quite making ends meet. And so I'll end up editing and just really doing whatever I can to make ends meet. When I sold my books, poetry, really just depending on what kind of prize you win, or, whether you're going the traditional route, sending it into an open reading period, sometimes the stark reality is that you're going to end up paying more to have it published than you're going to get back in prize money or royalties. I mean, that's been the case for me with a few of these books. And so I have won prizes. I apply for prizes as often as I can. Often what I do is I use the prize money to then put it back in and go and publish again. And so that's ended up how I've been able to participate in so many of these contests that I've won, is that I haven't, I don't have a lot of money on my own, but I've been able to put it back into the writing. And then I sold my novels, and, and I'm very transparent about how much I sold them for, which was $15,000 each. Which I got over the course of, since 2017 until 2020. So 3 years, so $30,000 plus, you have to give to your agent, whatever your contract is there if you have an agent, and then taxes, that's before taxes. So what I actually ended up taking away was significantly less than that over the 3 years.
We had talked a little bit earlier, in case you all are wondering, we talked a little bit earlier while I was trying to figure out tech. And I was telling her that I follow what they call poetry Twitter or writing Twitter. And what that means is that on Twitter, if you follow a lot of the same people within an industry, you get a chance to see how that industry works. So I follow a lot of poets and a lot of writers. And I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago, it's kind of difficult with 2020 time, pandemic time.
Right, absolutely.
Spot. But a lot of them talked about what kind of monies did they get for their publishing contracts and what have you. Roxane Gay, who is a Black
rock star.
She is a rock star, and in fact, we had her at Lakeland Public Library a few years ago, which I consider that a coup and a feather in my cap that I was able to bring her to Lakeland, Florida. But she is a writer, a commentator on social things. She's written comic books and nonfiction and fiction novels. She's done everything. And she's talked about the amount of money that she's made in her publishing contracts. And if you look at where she is and what she's done in a very short period of time, 10, 15 years, I think is a short period of time of what she's done. And then you find out how much she made for her publishing contracts. And it makes your mouth drop open because she's made hardly anything. And on that Twitter thread that was happening, you had some of the other writers, male and female, Black, and all other types of folks, white folks, whatever. And you find that some debut authors who write maybe say what they call beach fiction or women's fiction has made six figures, like you said before. And then people like Roxane Gay, who have such an influence on current culture, they've made that much.
Right.
That much. And so it's pretty eye-opening. But we're talking about all of this. I don't want you as a audience member, as a potential writer, to think, well, why should I do this? I want you to think that this is something that you need to do, because truly the world needs your voice. The world needs Jen's voice. I'm hoping the world needs my voice.
Absolutely.
We have to do this. This is a good thing.
So my daughter and I are working on this novel together, and you know, she was talking about how by the time she's 20, she'll have written, so 10 years now, she's projecting to the future, she'll have written, you know, maybe a book a year, or, you know, a book every 2 years. And, you know, she's got these big plans. And I said, you know, that's wonderful that you're thinking ahead like that, you know, and that you now have the equipment and the, you know, the motivation and the, you know, self-awareness and, you know, really wherewithal to write, you know, from a level that I just, maybe when I was 30, maybe, you know, so she's 20 years ahead of me, maybe in that way. I said, but at the same time, it's not about the deals. It's not about the contracts. It's not about any of that. You know, like I said, I've published about 8 books now, and it isn't the money, although, you know, I do want to get to a place where I can support myself with the writing. That's a goal that I have for myself, but that's not the only goal that's possible in writing. Like, it is perfectly acceptable, wonderful for your goal to live a life that is full of joy, where you're creating joy, right? Creating light from writing, you know. And if I weren't as concerned about, you know, monetary, you know, I'm often below the poverty or at the poverty line personally, but that's, you know, like I said, that's a problem of the higher education. That's a problem. You know, there are so many other factors involved in that.
Right.
And so you know, I absolutely want to encourage people that writing is so much more than just what anyone says we're worth, you know, whether that's monetary, whether that's, you know, are we winning awards? Are we being published? Like, writing has kept me alive, literally, you know? And so the fact that I'm able to share that with my daughter, and I told her it's the writing together that is so important and that is so rewarding, that I'm able to sit here with my daughter and create these stories. You know, whereas when I was 10, some of the things that I was living through, you know, that writing really has saved me and brought me to a place where now I can equip my daughter with the survival tactics that she doesn't have to go through the story that I went through.
And so with that said, I think we have done this. We have talked and solved all of the problems, all of the everything in art and writing. And we've come to the conclusion that art is good, art is necessary, and write your dreams down. Yes. And so, Jen, thank you so much for coming. I am always hoping the best possible success for your new book, Jubilee. No. Yes. Yep. Jubilee.
New one. Yep.
Yes. And once again, congratulations on your starred Publishers Weekly review. It's just amazing. I'm excited for you. And who knows? I'm gonna have to figure out how to maybe bring you back, or I don't know, do something, because you're pretty dang fantastic. Thank you so much for coming.
So are you.
Thank you. And everyone who is watching today, as always, thank you so much for joining us at Writers Den.